the Lord indicates here the two ways. Classically, this has been called the common way, and then the cursus rectus, the direct course. First of all, the Lord gives the answer which ensures salvation, keep the commandments, and then when pushed, he goes further and proposes what we in the consecrated life have taken up literally. Now, in that optic, we need to bear in mind that the other is not automatic either. We notice here that there is something very contemporary. You must not kill. You must not commit adultery. We are celebrating still the continuity of this high point in Marian devotion in Ireland, which is the novena to Our Lady of Knock, Queen of Ireland, but we are doing so in a very tense period. Killing, in the case of the unborn, is often linked with what follows here, sins against purity, because to kill as a result of luxury, as a result of lack of self-control, is but an extension of the problem. The problem already is there in the reason for conceiving against really the project, an accident as they put it. Now, what has happened in the last few years, really, one generation in this Holy Isle, is a huge victory for someone. When a novice in Kilnacrot in the early 90s, I used to go quite often on the bus organised by Anna Brady down to the grotto at Mount Melleray. It was the year after Our Lady had been appearing there, and we know that in 1985 she had warned that if certain things didn't happen, and you know the strong term that she used, and we couldn't understand it at the time, if such and such does not happen, the devil will take over the church. Now, in 1985, that was not at all easily understood. That is impossible, we thought to ourselves. But now, with hindsight, one can see in what sense that might actually be meant, that there is an infiltration. Now it's not only within, but now it's actually officially in high places on top of the church by that body which, even in the Constitution, which starts with an invocation of the Blessed Trinity, is supposed to be doing, and is actually not doing one bit. Now here we are against, therefore, the assurance of salvation, because it is not enough even to drift in and out of a Catholic Church to be in this first category, which is the common way to salvation, obeying the commandments. Let's get this straight. To kill is to kill, no matter what age the victim is. And if you have not seen the film called The Silent Scream by Professor Nathanson, look at it. Bernard Nathanson was one of the main abortionists in the state until he saw what was happening on screen. The silent scream of the one being aborted. And he realized it was not a blob of tissue. One time when I was a novice at Kilnacrot, a Benedictine came to town, and with him was somebody who had been aborted. This little lassie was about 15 or 16 at that time, was with him, and explained how she'd been put through a saline solution into what should have been instant death, but had been heard to be wailing by a nurse who kept a bit of tissue alive. And she, behind the microphone, said, I am not a blob of tissue. There's another testimony actually on YouTube of a person who also was aborted, who now is a mother of a family. And she had her child in the same clinic that tried to abort her. When Ireland was hanging on to the faith in penal times, the atmosphere was very different. She was fighting for someone, for something very precious, for her very soul as a nation, rather as Poland was under communism until very recently. And the church was what held Poland together, as was the case in the Republic here. Now, something happened way back in the penal times which is not much known. This is something which has been brought to public attention in the context of what happened on the 15th, last Thursday, in Knock, when Ireland was consecrated to the Immaculate Heart. Providentially, not long before the same is going to happen in the hands of our Holy Father. It was a great Marian gift to the Church. He's going to take, I understand, the statue from Fatima to Rome, or get it moved there for the occasion, for the 13th of October. And you know what that date means. This happened in the height of persecution. It was Bishop Walter Lynch, who was Bishop of Clonfert. He had to flee after consecrating Ireland to the Immaculate Heart of Mary in 1647. He went eventually to Belgium. And he remained in Győr until his untimely and unexpected death on the 14th of July 1663. The day, actually, he was due to return to Clonfert. Bishop Lynch is buried in Győr, but not forgotten either by Clonfert or by the Győr diocese. Bishop Lynch brought with him a sacred image of the Madonna and Child, with which he may have used actually in the very act of consecrating Ireland to the Immaculate Heart. Now, what happened was this. When the Dublin government decided to enact the laws of banishment on St. Patrick's Day, 1697, and that, by the way, led to a huge number of Irish finishing off in places like the Barbados. It was a terrible thing which followed that law of banishment. Huge numbers. It was a bleeding of the Irish nation. So when that was announced on St. Patrick's Day, 1697, that painting wept blood for many hours. A scene which was witnessed by most of the townspeople of Győr, where it is still venerated today. Bishop Kirby, that's the present Bishop of Clonfert, said that people come from all over Central Europe to venerate this sacred image. They come from Germany, Austria, Poland, Slovakia, and even further afield to this beautiful Marian shrine, where the Irish Madonna, in inverted commas, is venerated. Just a few days ago, the wife of the author of this drama, which is hot off the press, who's a friend of mine, Michael Ferguson from Duleek, came and we had Mass in the Hermitage. And this, as you can see from the front, and less well from the back. That actually is a very well-known picture of the entrance by rail to Auschwitz. This is the true story, essentially, of a girl who actually survived, but had a terrible time in Auschwitz. Because she was not one day doing as much as she was expected to do in producing what she had to produce work-wise, she was subjected to a punishment, that of standing out in the cold, hence the title, all night. It was about minus 30 degrees, and she had nothing on her feet. Now, Auschwitz was a place where the children were badly treated. One day, somebody was arriving to Auschwitz, and what did he saw as he got there but one of the officers throwing a child into the air and letting it drop into a furnace. It was a reproduction of hell on a part of this earth. And the Museum of Horrors is still there at Auschwitz, and as well as it is there, lest we forget. Now, this hits us, doesn't it? But at least these children would have had some kind of existence and would have gained some kind of probably huge reward. Whereas a child who is snuffed out in the womb, we don't blink an eyelid. And these politicians, we're probably going to find them tomorrow at our altar rails. Now, there's something incoherent here. I came across this, which I had written not long after I got to Ireland in my archives. It came back to my mind because one of my best friends, Tony, who helped me to set up in the Hermitage and has been a great help to me all along, is suffering from a very severe form of cancer. So by now, either I or Father Oliver from Penal go on a Saturday evening to celebrate quietly for them in their house so that he can get to church, but he can't get to church, so they can have the sacred mysteries in the dignity that is possible, because they're very much orientated towards the things of the Lord and miss it terribly if they can't go. But right next to their house nearly is this phenomenon, which is very contemporary. Way back, somebody of dignity, that's what's the point, somebody who was respected, somebody who had a social standing, demanded, or the family in his name demanded, that he be buried within the church in that area, Kildemo, the Church of St. Demo, and there his body was interred, but when he died, he was in a state of excommunication. He had not been reconciled. So, what happened? Local tradition has it, and the evidence is in the stone, that the miracle happened after he was put there. Quite unprecedented. We call it the jumping church. Go there and examine. It is a perpetual miracle, because the stone, the actual wall within which he would have been buried, has jumped and is now in perpetual suspense in diagonal. Its foundations are there, and the wall is like that, landing there without foundations, therefore excluding the body from the area where God alone is God and man is not there to be honoured. A subtle form of the same is to be found even in actually Knock right now, I have heard on the grapevine. It would appear that every time that something vaguely big happens at Knock, yes, God is honoured, yes, our Blessed Lady is greatly honoured, but so are we. Applause is given for any slight reason in the house of God. And to approach a homily which has, by the way, to be given by somebody in major orders, deacon, priest or bishop, if it's to be under the blessing of Almighty God, to treat that as something worthy of applause is to misunderstand that we are not to be judging in positive or in negative the person who is speaking in God's name, but we are judged by the word, and the correct attitude is silence. If we are coming to it as for entertainment, we're not going to be blessed. It's more of the same thing. It's subtle. But do you see how Our Lady foresaw all this when she said the devil will take over the church? It's a subtle infiltration of the demonic forces into the sacred. What in Daniel is called the abomination of desolation in the holy place. We've got so used to it that we actually participate in it without batting an eyelid. But God is God, and He has the last word. And if bit by bit churches are emptying and so on, it means that blessings are not being received there where He wanted to give them. To be blessed fully, we have to obey. We can't snatch a blessing. Therefore, if God is God, we are nothing at all. And to receive the applause due unto God alone is desecration of a very subtle but real kind. So, I wrote this, and at the end you can have it, but it's something which actually is perpetually valid. Because no matter how much hot air is placed in the mouth of men to glorify ourselves or to glorify each other before or after death, it is not in the house of God that it should be happening. And glory given unto man in the house of God is actually sacrilege. You know what the word means? It's to snatch the sacred. I just finished. Must have been about a year and a half ago that Ellen brought this as a present. We had seen it precisely in Knock, and she knew I had liked it, so in this came as a Christmas present. And it is something which shows the other side, where we are coming from. Now there you wouldn't have found much applause. There you wouldn't have found any disobedience to the laws of the church. There you wouldn't have found anything but, I would say, confession and rosary before, and thanksgiving and grace afterwards. Simplicity in authenticity. God and only God. God free to bless, and man in his correct position, in all fours, as that woman there, prostrate on the ground, showing that God was physically in charge and that we were there to be nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. And at Knock, where Our Lady came to reign, she is pushed aside while man is applauded. The jumping church. This is a land where strange, strange things combine their ways, where days that were live on upon the morrow's walls, where calls of thine leave not in peace a work too quickly done, and bid us not think lightly on a stone hewn once to hold a God, where plod would yet a soul not blessed or shriven, that could not own a place on earth or sky. Nay, we forget that moments linger long yond this long wall, that
severs time asunder. Blunders here cost aeons of old hurt, that age shall call from age to dawning age, where little fear is known, where known is little of the blaze, swift kindled, yet ne'er dwindled in its days.
Remember, this actually is an Eucharistic apparition, that the angels were adoring the centre of gravity, the Lamb slain on the altar, and that is also to be borne in mind every time we think of Our Lady is pointing to the Lord. It is fitting that we honour the Lord with the greatest possible praise, similar to that of the angels going round and round for 2 hours in silent adoration.